Today we're going to talk about the 13 most haunted cemeteries of the world, and starting with number 1, Bonaventure Cemetery in Savannah. Located along the Wilmington River, Bonaventure Cemetery is known for its gorgeous magnolia, dogwood and live oaks, colourful azaleas and interesting tombstones. This beautiful setting has made the more than 150-year-old burial ground one of the most photographed cemeteries in the country. Made famous for its role on the cover of the bestseller Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, Bonaventure beckons tourists to stop by. But among all the natural beauty, there's a supernatural side to the cemetery that draws in ghost enthusiasts and curious visitors from all over the world. The most well-known spirit here is that of little Gracie Watson, who died of pneumonia at 6 years old. A statue that was carved in her honour stands in front of her grave site, and many people place coins and toys at the base of the statue. Those who have stood close to her grave have reported seeing the beautiful little girl, and others have said they've saw tears of blood streaming down the angel's eyes. Bonaventure has several other elaborate statues, and guests have told accounts of them grimacing and smiling at them when they've stood in front of them. The cemetery is not without its spooky or inexplicable sounds, like that of a baby crying near an infant's grave, giggling children, or perhaps the most disturbing, the sounds of a pack of dogs snarling and barking angrily. No one has ever seen the dogs, but many have heard them. Number 2 is Stull Cemetery. It's located in the small town of Stull, Kansas, on a manual hill. It is seen as much more than a haunted house, and it is believed by many to be the gateway of hell, including many of the elders in this small town. There are many strange things about the old town and cemetery. It is located in a part of Kansas where the first 3 numbers of the zip code begin with 666, and the road leading to the cemetery was called Devil's Lane until it was changed in 1905. An article in the Kansas City Times in 1980 about the church and the cemetery added to the mystique of this tiny town and the stories that have circulated. It says the devil appears each Halloween in 2 spots. One is Stull, Kansas, and the other is India. The cemetery includes an abandoned church that was destroyed by a fire. It is basically just a shell without a roof, but the locals say when it rains, it does not fall inside the church. The stories of ghosts, witchcraft, and odd happenings at Stull Cemetery have been circulating for years. Many people believe there are too many things happening for them to be a coincidence. One of the stories are on a calm night, as 2 men were visiting the cemetery, a strong wind blew up and frightened them, so they decided to leave. When they got to the spot where they had parked their car, it wasn't there. It was on the other side of the road and facing in the opposite direction. Among many of the stories being told about the cemetery, there is one that says Satan's son is buried here. It also said that he visits his tomb on the stroke of midnight on Halloween and on the first day of spring. Number 3 is St. Louis Cemetery in New Orleans, and it's also considered to be one of the most haunted cemeteries in all of the United States. In the span of just 1 block, this burial ground holds over 700 tombs and over 100,000 of the dead and counting, as it's still an active grave site. For over 200 years, there has been reports of people having run-ins with the ghosts, which call St. Louis Cemetery number 1 home. The most famous ghost which is seen within St. Louis Cemetery is that of Marie Laveau. commonly known as the Voodoo Queen, Marie was born in 1801 and would become the most revered and at times feared voodoo practitioner in New Orleans history. She practiced fortune telling, the occult, and worked with herbal remedies. As awareness of Marie's skills and power spread throughout the population, her fame grew and gained unimaginable strength. Legend has it that she knew all the secrets on all levels of society. No doubt she did, as hordes of people fawned over her, begging for her to help them with their problems or assist them with their own rituals and spells. She was quite literally the go-to voodoo practitioner in New Orleans during the 19th century. The ghost of Marie Laveau has been spotted in many locations, including the cemetery and her old home street, and she often disappears if people try and follow her. And those willing and risking to disregard her or her beliefs or religion, reports exist of people being scratched, pinched, or shoved down to the ground. Marie, as they say, is not always the friendliest of spirits. Perhaps the most interesting of all is the practice of marking the tomb of Marie Laveau with 3 crosses while asking her for a favour or making a wish. Legend is, just as legend has it, that if the wish is granted, the person is required to return and place a gift at the side of the tomb. This is number 4, and we're going to Glasnevin Cemetery in Ireland. And this is probably a friendly ghost, because Glasnevin Cemetery is known for the ghost of a loyal hound who's said to haunt the grounds of this cemetery, which hosts special Halloween tours. He's said to never have left his owner's grave and still walks the grounds. The Northern Cemetery in Dunedin, New Zealand is considered one of the most haunted cemeteries in the world. And since the cemetery opened in 1872, over 17,700 people have been buried there. The wealth generated during the gold rush years is evident within the cemetery, with some very impressive tombstones on some of the graves. Notable people who were buried in the cemetery include Thomas Lamarck, Charles Spite, and poet, legislator and journalist Thomas Bracken. There are reports of apparitions being seen, disembodied voices, footsteps being heard when there is no one there. It is said that the ghosts of the Lamarck family in the mausoleum in the picture are housed in the recently renovated family tomb, and that spirits of the men executed and buried at the nearby Dunedin prison and later moved to the cemetery in 1898 also haunt the cemetery. This haunted graveyard is in Edinburgh, Scotland, and the Greyfriars Kirkyard is a historic graveyard, and it surrounds the Greyfriars Kirk Church, dating to the 1500s, and is rumoured to be among the most haunted graveyards in the world. The parish and graveyard are named for the defunct Franciscan friary on the site whose friars wore grey habits. The graveyard has seen many historic events take place within its grounds, and is the site of not only historic resting places, but heartwarming tales and bone-chilling ghost stories. The Kirkyard is famed throughout the world and attracts thousands of visitors every year to walk its grounds, see its historic graves, and possibly witness a spectral figure moving through the monuments. One grave in particular is even said to inspire author J.K. Rowling in her writing of the Harry Potter novels. Here you'll find stories of violent ghosts, a loyal dog, body snatchers, and beloved fantasy characters all in one place. What draws most people to Greyfriars Kirkyard are the stories of ghosts that plague the grounds. One poltergeist that has been said to harm explorers late at night is alleged to be the spirit of George Mackenzie, a ruthless persecutor of the 17th century Presbyterian movement. Legend has it that his spirit was released when a homeless man broke into his resting place in 1999, and that he has assaulted travellers inside the churchyard ever since. Some of the ghosts may belong to around 1,200 prisoners in 1679 who suffered brutal conditions, which is connected to the Kirkyard by an iron gate. The graveyard is also associated with the famous story of the Grey Friars Bobby, a dog who guarded his owner's grave for 14 years and has a headstone at the entrance. Here we're at the beautiful historical Highgate Cemetery in London, and this cemetery has a huge rumour that it's haunted by a vampire. And according to the legend, a king of vampires was buried at Highgate Cemetery. The vampire was originally a Romanian aristocrat who was a black magic practitioner and had been transported to England by his followers in a coffin in the 18th century. His followers had even purchased a house for him in the elegant West End area. According to legend, Satanists recently carried out rituals to reawaken the evil, and that's why the vampire appeared again. There were stories of dead animals found outside the cemetery grounds drained of blood, and two girls going down Swains Lane claimed to have seen a mysterious man of black disappear into the cemetery grounds. The vampire legend caused so much hysteria that in 1974 a man called Sean Manchester and his team went to the cemetery to find this vampire and found a black coffin. They removed the lid and they claimed that they saw an evil creature with fierce eyes and drawn back lips. He drove a stake into the vampire's heart, and then he and his followers burnt the coffin with the body. After this, he claimed, the Highgate Cemetery is purged from the vampire. Now we're at South Park Street Cemetery in Kolkata, India, and this cemetery originally opened in 1767, around the time that the British Empire started to develop in Bengal. It was built as the old burial ground was getting full and receiving too many bodies. Back then the area was called Burial Ground Road. Many of the British and European colonial residents in Kolkata caught tropical diseases which couldn't be cured back then, so a lot of them died very young. This graveyard was stopped being used in 1790 but was completely abandoned in 1830. But it is said to be the most haunted cemetery in India. People claim when they have visited this graveyard they have fainted or suddenly felt very ill. Others say they have felt vexed with chills up their spine, couldn't breathe or have a weird feeling. There's a legend that during monsoon, the Dennison family tomb bleeds and oozes blood. So it now has the nickname of the Bleeding Tomb. The Dennison family all died within a week of each other with unknown causes. Piere Cemetery is the largest cemetery in Paris, France. More than 300,000 people are buried here, including a few famous individuals. Originally, the cemetery grounds was an estate on which a mansion was built in 1430. The Jesuits acquired the mansion and estate in the 17th century and turned it into a nursing home. One of the most important residents was Father Francois de la Chaise, the confessor of King Louis, who lived there for 30 years. The Jesuits sold the mansion and the land in 1762 to pay off debts. After that, it had many different residents until it fell into disrepair. In 1801, it was made into a cemetery. People who visit this cemetery have heard disembodied voices and claim to have seen spectral lights and glowing figures here. But there is more. Jim Morrison, one of the celebrities buried here, was a lead singer in The Doors. He died in 1971, at aged only 27. The cause of death is still not clear. His grave is hard to find, but when you approach it, it cannot be missed. Not only is his own grave covered in graffiti, so are all the surrounding headstones. Since his bust was stolen in 1981, a security guard watches over his grave. Jim wanders around the cemetery. People even claim to have captured his apparition in a picture. The ghost story of the French novelist Marcel Proust is a sad one. He died at the age of 51 in 1922 of pneumonia. Being a homosexual in that time wasn't easy. He and his lover's last wish was to be buried near each other, but that wish was not granted. Marcel now rises from his grave each night in search of his lover, whom he can never find. People say they have seen him roaming around the cemetery at night. Stonehenge might be one of the most famous mysteries haunting the world, but it is far from alone when it comes to perplexing stone structures. Just outside Osnabruick in Germany, a structure of stones, believed to be an ancient pagan temple and burial ground, still sits. But it is not the layout of the stones or the rituals that once took place here that spark questions. It's what happens during winter solstice and summer equinox that have dominated conversations. During Charles Main rule, 9th century, he forced Christianity onto the German public, and in doing so, he attacked the temple, breaking the largest outer stone himself. To this day, rumours of orbs of light, screams and strange stains on the rocks still haunt this town. One of the most infamous haunted cemetery is the Bachelor Grove Cemetery in Chicago, Illinois. And it's long been abandoned and no one's been buried there for 50 years, but it attracts visitors nonetheless. Those who dare enter Bachelor's Grove must walk down a deserted path through the forest, over fallen trees and thorn bushes, only to come face to face with some of Chicago's most frightening haunts. They may encounter strange and unusual creatures, like a two-headed lake monster, a phantom dog with red eyes, and seemingly intelligent orbs of light. The ghost of a woman carrying her infant baby is known to haunt the graveyard during the full moon, usually standing at her tombstone. Even the roads around Bachelor's Grove are haunted. Many say they have been chased down the street by phantom cars with no drivers, only for the car to disappear as it got close. But some of the haunts at Bachelor's Grove are way too real, like the occultists who once used the cemetery as a place to practice their demonic rituals, complete with animal sacrifices, or the photo of the Madonna of Bachelor's Grove, one of the most infamous photos of a ghost ever captured. Even though the graveyard is long abandoned, the spirits of those who rest here haven't gone anywhere. Another famous haunted cemetery is the La Recoleta Cemetery in Argentina, and it's famous for a haunted lady in white. The story goes like this. A young man met a beautiful girl dressed in white at the corner of Vicente Lopez, where the cemetery is located, and he took her out on a date. During the night, the girl felt so cold, so the young gentleman gave her his jacket, and she spilt some drink on it. The next day, when the young man went to her home to get his jacket, he met the girl's mother, who told him that the girl he was looking for had actually died a long time ago, and she was buried in the Recoleta Cemetery. The young man couldn't believe it, so he went to the cemetery and found that his drink-stained jacket was draped over the crypt with the girl's name on it. The young man went mad or killed himself. The alleged lady in white is called Luz Maria Garcia Veloso. She was only 15 years old when she died from leukemia in 1925. Her resting place can actually be found easily at the cemetery. It is close to the entrance on the right side of the main path. Last but not least, I want to talk about the haunted Minmi Cemetery in Newcastle, Australia. And it's been rumoured to be one of the most haunted cemeteries in New South Wales. There's been many rumours of a bright blue-white glow coming from the cemetery and just a feeling of unworldliness about it, and also a phantom motorbike rider that has been reported along Minmi Road. A bright light will appear in front of the vehicle and seemingly pass right through the car, leaving it ice cold inside. Jason and I investigated this cemetery for his channel earlier this year, and we did see some strange lights that we couldn't explain. We also heard demonic chantings, and we had strange noises, and we'll end up leaving quickly as we felt danger was emanating. I'll put the link to that video called The Most Evil Cemetery in the comments below after this video, and I hope that you've enjoyed these stories today. Stay spooky, stay safe. And if you have visited one of these haunted cemeteries, or if you have had a paranormal experience in a cemetery, please let me know in the comments below, and thank you for watching.